Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.
March is here. So what is it looking like? I'm 13 News meteorologist Matt Standridge. Because we all know March has several swings. Sometimes you even get a little bit of snow, sometimes rain, and sometimes even tornadoes. It's a month that is all over the place as spring arrives, both meteorological spring and astronomical spring with the spring equinox. Let's talk about what March is like, put some numbers to it, and then we'll take a look at what we expect for March 2026. But of course, as always, let's start with daylight, the primary driver of our seasonal changes. Not just the amount of daylight in a given day, but also the sun angle. You have a higher sun angle, you'll heat things up a little bit faster, more effectively. So for the month of March, we have the biggest daylight gain of the entire year, from March 1st to March 31st. Over 100 minutes being added, about an hour and a half, really close, for the northern border U.S. with Canada up to the north. And then it drops as you go farther south. But even Florida has a decent change in daylight, and they don't have as drastic swings as locations farther to the north. Most of the country will at least gain an additional hour this March. Here in Indiana, we're talking 70s, 80s for those minutes that are being added. 78 minutes additional daylight in Indianapolis, 84 in South Bend, 73 in Evansville. There's actually a decent difference from north to south just over the state of Indiana. So March has the biggest daylight gain. Here we go. More warm weather on the way. Specifically, though, with our time and the time change, we spring forward throughout the month of March. Look what it kind of happens with our sunrises and sunsets. At the beginning of the month, we start with a sunrise 7:17. Now it gets kind of tricky. Looks, a little bit later in the morning. That's because of the time change. If we didn't have the time change, it would be 6:30. But we do have the time change, and that really shows a big difference on our sunsets. So 6:30 is sunsets there at the beginning of the month. By the end of the month, 8 o'clock sunsets. If we didn't have the time change, it'd be 7:07. Not bad. It's 8:07 by the end of the month because of that time change. So adding an hour and a couple extra minutes of daylight in Indianapolis. Of course, we have the full moon. Now, we already had it at the beginning of the month. We had that total lunar eclipse with too many clouds in Indiana. It's also called the worm moon in the month of February, as we're starting to soften the soil with warmer weather, but also wetter weather, more rainfall. Rain is the best way, just some pure water, just trying to melt some of the snowpack, of course, and then just trying to thaw out the ground. It's like if you have a frozen chicken or any kind of meat, you got it frozen. One way you could probably thaw it out is just throw it in a bowl of warm water or so, and that'll do it a little bit faster. But anyways, got all the full moons for the year. It was really cool with the lunar eclipse. Parts of the U.S. saw it. It was stunning. We have more full moons, of course, ahead. Next full moon will be right at the beginning of April, April 1st. We have the pink moon. It's not actually pink, but we'll have the pink moon and more moons ahead. We do have a blue moon in May. That's where you get 2 full moons in a month. But for March, just 1 moon at the beginning. Already had it with the lunar eclipse. But let's talk about our temperatures. What do we generally expect? Then we'll take a look at rainfall and some severe weather chances too. At the beginning of the month, we start in the mid-40s and we climb to the upper 50s. There's a big swing in our average daily high temperatures, but we're still cold enough some days. It's not as if every day is then above freezing, right? We have a lot of swings. Some days are well beyond 50. We've had 80s in March before. We've also had days with some 20s and 30s with some snow chances. In fact, March, there's still a chance of snow, and on average, we do expect 3.2 inches of snow, so we'll see how the month ends up. When you boil that water down from the snow and just normal rainfall too, the average amount of precipitation for March, just over 3.5 inches. February is one of our driest months, and now we're starting to switch that back over, getting into our rainy season with the spring. Most of the days for average highs, they'll be in the 50s. So kind of cool and wet with some spikes of warmth and also still some sharp cold fronts. But those cold fronts will start to become a little bit more limited as spring moves forward. But we also talked about the daylight change. I want to talk about sun angle real quick. In the middle of March, we start getting a sun angle that's almost at 50 degrees. If you were to take the sky, look at the horizon, that would be 0. All the way straight up would be 90. So the sun by the middle of the month is actually a little bit more than halfway up the sky. You're getting shorter shadows because the sun is getting higher. It's a warmer sun and you're just getting more sunlight. And so that's why we do continue to warm up. And it's not been unheard of that some Hoosiers even get a little bit of a sunburn if you're out all day, especially at the end of the month with some sunshine. Some folks may be working out in the garden and they think, why am I a little red? You can start getting a sunburn at the end of the month. UV index is starting to climb. March is just crazy. There's a lot of these stats that are pretty impressive, including wind. It is our windiest month on average, with an average sustained wind above 11 miles per hour. I mean, it's not first by a lot. We are in our windy season from the winter into the spring. But technically, when you look at all the numbers, on average, it is the windiest month. It is also a cloudy month. However, some improvements are being seen with the sky coverage. Our cloudiest time of the year is the heart of winter, December, January, February, where those cold winds come over Lake Michigan. Those cold winds will be not as cold a lot of times coming over the Great Lakes, and the Great Lakes are kind of cold already because they've gone through winter. The water is cold. So you don't form the clouds as much. I mean, you do still, but not nearly as much as you were back earlier into the winter. Still, over half our days are cloudy, but notice by April, more days are sunnier than they are cloudier. Even though it's our wet season, we're talking about more sunny days ahead. That's some good news. But there's still a little bit of winter left. And when you look at how much snowfall we would typically get, we get 20 to 30 inches on average in much of central Indiana, less than 20 just south of the city. But then you get into northern Indiana by the lake effect snow belts, 60 inches. I mean, we're talking about, 5 feet or more in several spots for some of those average snowfall totals. How much have we picked up? Well, this kind of purplish color shows you places where, for the most part, we have picked up 2 feet, maybe more in spots. Depending on where you are, everyone gets something a little bit different. Specifically for Indianapolis, check this out. This is ever since 2013 to 2014 season. We're at 29.1 inches for this winter season so far. Last time we had that much was back over a decade ago, the winter of 2013 to 2014. We've had a lot of below average winters. We've made up for it a little bit this year. Not drastically above average, but definitely above average. Snow to sometimes severe weather, or actually it'd be severe weather to snow a lot of times, right? There's been several times where you get a front with tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings, and then by nightfall you're getting snow in Indiana. We've seen it all in the month of March. But severe weather is something that we have to watch a little bit more closely in the month of March because we can warm up and then cold fronts are not too far behind. The bulk of severe weather is typically in the deep south and the Ouachitas and right along the Red River Valley there out west. But we start getting our severe weather chances too. In fact, we can get tornadoes in Indiana. In fact, we expect tornadoes in the month of March in Indiana. On average, 3. Now the bullseye is farther to the south where things start waking up. They have a little bit more warmth, a little bit more Gulf humidity starting to return. So the severe weather typically is to the south, but there's a couple days of the month where you get the surge of warmth, the cold front comes in, and we're talking about severe weather. So this is the average since 2020 or 2000 to 2024. Okay, hopefully that kind of paints the picture with numbers for the month of March. Nothing that you didn't know already specifically, right? But let's talk about what we expect this month. Well, the jet stream, especially for the first half of the month, has retreated well off to the north. We've had a pretty cold winter, and so the jet stream is retreating back north. And so for the first half of the month, we really do expect above average weather. We will get cool downs there in the middle of the month in the end, but I don't know if they'll really outweigh or outnumber the warm spells. I think we'll have more warm spells than cold spells. It's kind of a way you have to paint this transitional season between winter and summer. Really, that's all spring is. It's just the transition between the two, right? And so you're going to have these spells. It's never consistently the same weather in the month of March, but I do think we'll have more warm spells than cold spells. This is the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center as that jet stream lifts to the north, especially the polar jet. Now the subtropical jet may start to move northbound a little bit. That has a little bit more humidity, and that could really gear us up for a wetter than normal March. In fact, the first week of March, at times we've been seeing a lot of rain, and we could end up with more rain than the average for the entire month of March. Remember that month of March average was just over 3.5 inches? There will be places after the first week of March where there are 3, 4, or maybe even 5 inch rainfall reports, and that's just the first week. So we do expect a wetter than normal March ahead, not just for Indiana, but for much of the Ohio River Valley and the Ozarks and much of the Midwest. Of course, with a wetter than normal pattern, there could also be higher chances for some severe weather. Now, if you just get a lot of rain, it's hard for the atmosphere to recover for severe weather, but there will be a chance for storms and maybe a little bit of a higher chance for storms this March. March is a crazy month, and we expect it to be no different for 2026.
Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.